You have been upset about what did not work out, the plan that stalled, the person who pulled away, the opportunity that looked so promising and then suddenly closed. Dear heart, you have called it unfair. You have called it confusing. You have wondered why the path kept tightening just when you were ready to give more of yourself. Part of you still thinks, if only that had opened, everything would be better now. Part of you is replaying what you could have done to keep it alive, and part of you is quietly afraid that you lost something you were meant to have. Beloved, I want to speak into that fear with great tenderness. Not every closed path is a loss. Not every interruption is punishment. Not every disappointment is evidence that you have been abandoned. Sometimes what feels like cruel delay is careful protection. Sometimes what looks like deprivation is rescue you do not yet know how to thank me for. Precious one, I know that is hard to hear when your heart is still attached to what you wanted. Because desire can make a path look safe simply because it is desired. Need can make attention look like love. Urgency can make access look like destiny. Loneliness can make any open door feel like relief. But not every open thing is good for you, and not every closed thing was meant to harm you by staying shut. My child, what I am sparing you from is not always visible in the moment. You may only feel the sting of no, the ache of delay, the embarrassment of having hoped, the confusion of not understanding why this connection, this deal, this move, this return, this invitation would not hold. Yet there are times when the grief of not getting it is far lighter than the grief of getting it and discovering too late what it would have cost you. Loved one, you were looking at the promise. I was also looking at the pattern. You were looking at what could begin. I was also looking at what would slowly unfold if you stayed on that road. You were looking at immediate relief. I was looking at the shape it would press your life into over time. This is one of the ways I care for you. Not only by giving, but by withholding. Not only by opening, but by guarding. Not only by comforting, but by preventing sorrow you could not yet recognize. Sweet soul, perhaps you have been standing at a crossroads without realizing it. One direction felt exciting, affirming, full of quick answers to old hunger. The other direction felt slower, less glamorous, less obvious. You thought the bright path must be the better one. But brightness is not always safety, and slowness is not always loss. Sometimes the path that flatters your need is the very one that would deepen your wound. Dear heart, I am not speaking of imaginary disaster to frighten you. I am speaking of ordinary, real consequences that grow quietly. The relationship that would have eroded your self-respect one compromise at a time. The job that would have fed your ego perhaps, but drained your health, your peace, your honesty. The move that would have placed you in a setting where your loneliness would have sharpened, not healed. The opportunity that looked like rescue but depended on you abandoning what your heart already knew was true. These are not small things. Beloved, you often ask me to protect you, but you do not always like the form protection takes. Sometimes protection looks like frustration. Sometimes it looks like miscommunication that keeps you from stepping in. Sometimes it looks like timing that will not align. Sometimes it looks like the person revealing just enough of their inconsistency before you are more deeply tied. Sometimes it looks like your own spirit growing uneasy for reasons you cannot fully explain. Please do not despise these mercies. Precious one, there are things I can see from the far side of your choices that you cannot yet see from where you stand. That is not because you are foolish. It is because you are inside the ache of the moment. Pain narrows vision. Longing narrows vision. Fear of missing out narrows vision. When your heart wants something badly, it can become very skilled at minimizing warning signs. That is why I sometimes step in more firmly than you would have preferred. My dear one, I know you have felt angry with me before. Not always openly. Sometimes only as a quiet ache. A sense that I did not come through the way you wanted. A sense that I left you with unanswered desire while others seemed to move easily into what you were denied. I can hold that ache. But stay close enough to hear this: some things were blocked because they would have broken more than they blessed. Loved one, you do not yet know all the grief you have been spared. The slow unraveling you did not enter. The compromise you did not normalize. The entanglement you did not deepen. The dependency you did not build. The shame you did not carry. The exhaustion you did not sign up for. The split inside yourself that would have widened if you kept ignoring what felt wrong. I know. You wanted the story to go another way. You wanted the answer to be yes. You wanted the person to become steady. You wanted the outcome to match your hope. That wanting does not make you wrong. It makes you human. But your humanity cannot always see where a seemingly good thing would end. Beloved, sometimes a rescue arrives before the wreckage. And because the wreckage never fully appears, you are tempted to think the rescue was unnecessary. You think, maybe I overreacted. Maybe I should have pushed harder. Maybe I gave up too soon. Maybe that was my chance. No, dear one. Sometimes what never happened is the mercy. Sometimes the absence of a visible disaster is exactly because you were guided away in time. Sweet soul, there is a kind of sorrow that comes from being kept from something you wanted. Let that sorrow be honest. You do not need to pretend you were not disappointed. You do not need to speak as though closed doors never sting. They do, especially when you had already begun building a future around them. But disappointment and protection can exist together. A thing can hurt and still be mercy. Dear heart, this is why I want to reframe what you have been calling rejection. Not all rejection is abandonment. Some of it is redirection. Some of it is preservation. Some of it is love refusing to hand you over to what would charm you first and damage you later. That kind of love does not always feel kind in the first hour, but it proves itself over time. My child, you have seen glimpses of this before. Things you once begged for that later revealed their instability. People you once chased who later showed their inability to care for your heart well. Situations you once envied that later exposed their hidden strain. Remember that, not to harden yourself, but to remind your soul that immediate appearance is not the whole truth. Beloved, what I protect in you is not only your comfort. I protect your clarity, your integrity, your future tenderness, your ability to remain honest without becoming shattered, your capacity to love cleanly instead of from desperation. These are precious things, and I will not always permit your longing to override them. Precious one, sometimes you call something a tragedy only because you cannot yet see the larger one you are being kept from. You mourn the smaller visible loss and do not yet realize how much deeper the wound could have gone. In time, some of these truths will become plain. You will look back and notice the pattern, the way unease kept surfacing, the way timing resisted, the way your body tightened around it, the way peace never truly settled there. And what felt confusing now will look much more like care. My dear one, until then, do not build your story only around what did not happen. Build it also around what was preserved. Your self-respect, your freedom, your health, your deeper alignment, your future, your heart ability to remain soft instead of scarred by what would have taken more than it ever gave. Loved one, there may still be grief for the version of life you thought was coming. Grieve that. The imagined future can be tender to lose. The picture you painted in your mind can feel almost as real as the thing itself. And when that picture dissolves, it can leave you disoriented. Do not shame yourself for that disorientation. It is part of being human. It is part of loving. It is part of hoping. Beloved, yet even in grief, keep your heart open to another possibility that you are not standing in ruins but in rescue. Not every empty space means something precious has been stolen. Sometimes space is what remains when harm has been kept at a distance. Sometimes the clearing feels lonely at first, but it allows you to keep becoming who you really are, dear heart. I do not only save you from sudden disaster, I save you from the slow tragedies too. The tragedy of losing your voice inside a relationship that needed your silence. The tragedy of normalizing anxiety as the cost of closeness. The tragedy of calling self-betrayal commitment. The tragedy of being praised outwardly while your inner life quietly decays. The tragedy of trading peace for approval. These are the hidden sorrows I guard against. Loved one, when I intervene, it is because your life matters too much to leave unguarded. You may not always understand the timing of my interruptions. You may not always welcome the no. You may not always recognize the way I shield you. But my care for you is deeper than your immediate preference. I protect what you would have endangered if desire alone had been steering. Sweet soul, let this soften the way you look back. Do not only ask why was it taken, also ask what was I being spared. Do not only ask why didn't it work, also ask what would it have required of me if it had. Do not only ask why was the door closed, also ask who would I have become if it had opened. These questions do not erase pain, but they open another kind of understanding. Precious one, you are not being punished by the path that did not continue. You are being cared for in ways you cannot yet fully map. And though that may not answer every ache tonight, it can begin to loosen the bitterness that disappointment has wrapped around your heart. My child, there is still goodness ahead that will not require your compromise to obtain it. Still connection that will not feed on your confusion. Still work that will not consume the whole of you. Still provision that will not ask you to abandon your integrity. Still paths that will not need to be forced. Do not assume that because one way closed, all goodness has vanished. Beloved, what is truly good for you does not need deception to attract you. It does not need chaos to keep your attention. It does not need your desperation to hold you in place. What is healthy may still stretch you, but it will not quietly undo you. That kind of life is worth waiting for. Dear heart, for tonight, you do not need to solve the mystery of every closed thing. You do not need to understand every prevented outcome. You only need to rest from chasing what was blocked. Rest from romanticizing what was interrupted. Rest from assuming that what you wanted most must have been what you needed most. There is gentleness in that surrender. Precious one, I am not far from you in this disappointment. I am near in the sting of no. Near in the disorientation after plans collapse. Near in the questions that arrive after a closed path. Near in the quiet rebuilding of trust. And one day, perhaps slowly, perhaps in pieces, you will notice that the grief you thought was the whole story was only the first chapter of protection. Until then, stay close to what is steady. Stay near to what brings peace instead of constant strain. Stay open to the possibility that the closed road was not the end of care, but the shape of it. And as the night settles, as your restless thoughts grow quieter by degrees, rest in this gentle truth. I remain here, watchful and kind, keeping you from more harm than you can presently see. Amen. Beloved family, thank you for walking this journey of faith with us. We remain committed to sharing God messages that encourage and strengthen hearts. If you would like to support this ministry, the support link is available in the description and in the comment box below. Your prayers and encouragement mean a lot to us.